Good afternoon. Glad you're with us this afternoon. You would have seen the arrest this morning of the former Mineral Resources Minister, Mosebenzi Zwane. Zwane was released on 10,000 rand bail. He was arrested on charges of fraud, money laundering and corruption relating to the Estina Dairy project. You remember how this appears to implicate the former Free State Premier Ace Magashule. Magashule faces charges relating to the asbestos scandal. Zwane was referred to in the Zondo Commission report as a Gupta minister. Professor Sethulego Matebesi is a professor of sociology at the University of the Free State. Professor, good afternoon to you. This is a big arrest. People have been calling for action on charges like this. Do you think it shows that the NPA is now serious?
Hi, good afternoon, Stephen, and good afternoon to the viewers. Most definitely, I do not think that South Africans realize the extent that to which corruption affects the ordinary lives of South Africans, let alone the people in the Free State. But this arrest will definitely bolster the NPA stance that they will take action without fear or favor. I know Mr. Mosebenzi Zwane has not been found guilty. But once again, I mean, his arrest is just indicative that these are the sad outcomes of our democracy. Our democracy has delivered to us men and women who were supposed to deliver us to the so-called land of promise. But it seems as if we are still very far from reaching that as a result of the action or inaction of certain political leaders.
There's so much to this, because if it is true that the National Prosecuting Authority is behaving independently for, well, I mean, perhaps the first time in the history of our country as a nation state, and before that, that could have a real impact on our politics. If people like Zwane, at one point, you know, a minister, untouchable, able to do literally whatever he and his boss wanted him to do, now suddenly he could find himself in jail. Doesn't that change our politics?
No, most definitely. Stephen, if I had to go to Mars and come back and you were sharing this kind of information with me, I would be completely amazed, because 10, 15 years ago, I don't think even your most shrewd political commentator would have predicted that this is going to happen in South Africa. And this is clearly indicative that our political landscape is changing, and the NPA, it's at least, I know it's tremendous pressure on our investigative units to take action, the police, and you can name them, the justice, the department. But at the end of the day, when you see these kind of things, and yes, we do also want to, in the same line, also want to emphasize that yes, it should only not be people from a certain grouping, but once any act of criminality has been conducted, people in this country should know that action will be taken irrespective of who you are. And yes, just to come back to your question, this is definitely a huge booster for our democracy, irrespective of the outcome of these cases, because it definitely indicates that no one in this country is above, a reproach.
Professor, I mean, when you say that, no one in this country is above reproach, and this shows that, it makes you wonder, in a way, what's going to happen with Phala Phala. I mean, my thought process immediately went there. If a former cabinet minister, as you say, who could have predicted that that would happen? I mean, could we see consequences from Phala Phala that may seem, well, unimaginable now, but in a year's time, anything could happen?
Yes, no, most definitely. If the president is found guilty, for us, some of us who have been following the political career of President Cyril Ramaphosa, unlike his predecessor, there's the most likelihood that he may just come to a conclusion to resign, even if he is elected for a second term to become the president of this country and even of the African National Congress. But we've also seen those in power always have the means to try and still undue pressure, or even if they don't do it, forward in a very transparent manner, because in most instances, these kind of things happens behind the scenes. But I think the president and even some political leaders would have learned a lesson to say that most of these transactions and decisions that are being taken, agreements that are being made behind closed doors have a nasty way of finding the public domain, and I think they will be very cautious not to do that. But sometimes I strongly believe that once if you are the sitting current president, there is also undue pressure, and that's why sometimes you will see that it seems as if some institutions and individuals are very reluctant to act against a sitting president because of the potential consequences as a result of their action. But definitely, I foresee a situation, if it goes against the current president, that it will have a huge dent on him, his career as the president of the African National Congress and of South Africa.
So just to come back to the short term, Zwane is chair of the Portfolio Committee of Transport in Parliament. He's on the NEC of the ANC. Now he is charged. Do you expect the step-aside rule to come into effect? Do you expect him to have to resign from Parliament?
Yes, no, most definitely. But my take was, if the ANC is worth what they have been preaching as a leader of society, somebody like Mosebenzi Zwane should not even have been given an opportunity to occupy that position in Parliament. But that's the nature of the African National Congress. The African National Congress reward people with serious allegations against them, and that's why you also have a situation where your former president still, wants to become the chairperson of the African National Congress. That is unheard of. And this also just tells you, yes, some people will say it's vibrant democracy happening within the African National Congress. But for me, the step-aside rule definitely has to come into effect with regard to Mosebenzi Zwane, because he has been charged and he did appear in a court of law.
So this is from the Estina Dairy Farm. We have the Zondo Commission findings around someone like Nomvulo Mokanyane, that she received money from Busasa. There's a recommendation that she be investigated and possibly criminally charged. And yet she's going around the country literally picking up nominations to be the next Deputy Chair, the next Deputy Secretary General, of the ANC. We have Dr. Zweli Mkhize, again, not formally charged, but the Digital Vibe scandal is really hanging around him in a way. He's nominated to be leader of the ANC by the KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Executive Committee. What's going on in the ANC that this keeps happening? You make a strong point in your view about how you think the ANC rewards people like this. But I don't know if voters are going to in 2024. Has the game changed? Are we going to come back from Mars in 2024 and find a very different country if this continues?
Yeah, no, well, I mean, if the environment is conducive to these kind of things, where you've got a political party which have been dominating the political landscape in terms of electoral support in South Africa, they can afford to do these things. I can guarantee you, Stephen and South Africans, if the African National Congress knew that they are going to face a very fierce contest come the next episode of the elections, which in any case they know, but they know that they still stand a chance of winning that election, or at least getting a partner will ensure that they are still having the majority in Parliament. So it is this kind of thing. The African National Congress will only start taking heed of what is happening around it when it has tremendous pressure with the ballot box. And as the status quo is continuing, I don't foresee the African National Congress changing it. They can afford to do these kind of things. It's unheard of where you've got somebody with such serious charges. And there's, you know what, these leaders are also doing quite well, the narrative that they've been peddling around that I have not been found guilty. But we have seen on numerous occasions how even presidents presidents in other parts of the world resign just because of serious allegations that are in the public domain, and just to try and prevent there being reputational damage to the office of the presidency. But it's definitely not going to happen within the African National Congress, because many of the current leaders are fighting for their political lives, and it seems as if for them they still have a chance of becoming leaders. And I strongly believe that then they will reverse all the gains in terms of what the NPA has done. They will undo all that when they come to power. And I think that is perhaps also the pressure on some of these leaders to try by all means to ascend to political positions of power within the African National Congress.
Professor Sethulego Matebesi, really appreciate the time, strong view there. Thank you very much indeed.